Well, hello, I'm Patrick Pallas, and on behalf of the National Council of Bar Presidents, we're checking in to bar leaders across the country to see how they're handling this COVID-19 crisis. And today, really have the great pleasure of stopping in and talking with Monte Frank, who's former president of the Connecticut Bar. Monte, thank you and welcome. Glad you can join us today.
Thanks, Patrick. It's good to talk to you on the other side of the country.
Right. Let me start here, though, and it's a question I've asked everyone. How are you doing? How are you surviving this crisis?
Well, I've been look. I'm blessed and grateful that my friends and my family and colleagues at work are all healthy, and that's number one. Secondly, I really believe in wellness, whether you're a lawyer or anybody else. So I'm finding the time to get out inside and go for hikes with my dog, and I spend a lot of time in the basement banging away on my bike. Instead of riding outside, I've moved to I'm racing against people from all over the world on this platform called the Zwift, which is amazing. But wellness is important. And then I'm really busy. I'm kind of wearing three hats right now. I have my legal work, and fortunately, I still have some. We can talk about that. I chair our litigation department at Pullman and Comley, which is a 100-lawyer firm in Connecticut. And I was appointed to co-chair the Connecticut Bar's COVID-19 task force, and I chair our federal and state judiciary subcommittee. So wearing those three different hats, even though I've been home now by myself for about, isolated for about 5 weeks. The days go by really quickly. And my head hits the pillow at night and I'm exhausted.
Well, this is one of the reasons I want to talk with you, because not only are you in a place to have a really good view of what lawyers need and what our profession needs in your state, on the East Coast, and maybe across the country as well, as a member of the NCBP Executive Council. But this also isn't the first time you've been through crisis before. And maybe we can start there a minute. Some people may know, I know a lot of people around the time when Sandy Hook happened knew that you were involved, but this has been really turned into something that's gone for long. Talk about Sandy Hook a minute and some maybe the tools that you learned in crisis management that we can move on to talk about here.
Well, even going before that, when 9/11 hit, I was in the area where, we were expecting a lot of impacts. My younger daughter was born literally 8 days after 9/11, and I remember the local hospital being essentially the way some of the hospitals were here before COVID, in that they were clearing beds, trying to prepare themselves for something that never happened. But after that, I watched as lawyers were engaged in crisis management in New York City and the surrounding areas. I got involved with a group called Lawyers Care and represented somebody pro bono before all the various committees and government agencies on the recovery aspect and providing victims' compensation. And then, so, I kind of saw, lawyers doing good work and the best out of lawyers and what lawyers can do in crisis times to really benefit their communities. When Sandy Hook shooting occurred, I represent the town of Newtown, and we were thrown into a crisis situation with absolutely no playbook. We were the first real mass shooting to affect a community like Sandy Hook. There had been shootings before, but it was a little bit different. We had national attention, the spotlight, media, donations, 50,000 plus teddy bears being delivered to a small town. And so, you use your best judgment and try to figure out, all right, what are the ways that we can move forward, best represent our community from a legal perspective, and also outward face to the public and the larger community to effectuate some good. And that experience while unfortunate, and I wish I never had to go through, I think really prepared me for taking on a leadership role with the Connecticut Bar during this crisis. And, how do you engage people? How do you organize people? How do you get to a place without a playbook so that you can challenge the rest of your members to be leaders, get people to take leadership roles, and effectuate some real change within the legal community and outward to the public.
So let's unpack that a little bit. So you were, I assume, appointed into the role as the co-chair for the Connecticut Bar, and also into the role with the federal. What's the name of the committee for the federal?
So we have 8 subcommittees now as part of the CBA, the Connecticut Bar's COVID-19 Task Force. One of them
All right.
interfacing.
But you said you were doing the federal. It was a federal bar work as well, or federal courts. What was the other piece? There's
a subcommittee that is dedicated to the judicial branch. So it's the federal and the state judicial system that we are focusing on, and we have actual judges on our subcommittee trying to work with the courts to get them open and operating and functioning as best they can in light of the public health crisis.
All right. So as your position in leadership with the Connecticut Bar as part of this task force, tell me where you started. Tell me where you're going. What kind of tips you have for bar leaders?
Yeah, and to back up, again, we were thrown into this, much like, but it's not like we didn't have any bit of warning. And so what I would say is, much like the United States may not have paid enough attention to what was going on in Italy and China before it landed on our doorstep, to the extent that you're now in a state where you don't have a lot of COVID-19 cases, you will be impacted in many of the same ways that my state and Connecticut, your state, Patrick, and Washington and California and New York have. And now's really the time to prepare. If you do what we did, we're essentially giving you the playbook that we didn't have. So, I would encourage you to take on the leadership role, start forming your subcommittees, start identifying your leaders so that you can get to the point where we are now, but you're ahead of the game. So if you want, I can start talking about some of the things we did, if that'd be helpful.
Yeah, no, please, because I think what's going to happen is that this crisis isn't going to end anytime soon, and some bar leaders, I think, may be under the impression that once we get the return to work orders, this is over. And I'm pretty clear that this is not going to be over. This is a new normal that we're establishing, and bar leadership and the things that we do as bar leaders now are what's going to protect both the legal profession and all the people that rely on us. And I'm curious to hear the kind of steps that you're taking in Connecticut, both to solve the immediate needs in crisis and what this is going to look like as things start to change to a new normal.
Yeah, so I think as a bar leader, the first thing you should do is take a look at who you have within your ranks, who can step up and be the real leaders of your subcommittees. In Connecticut, we were fortunate that we spent a lot of time on the diversity and inclusion. So we had a lot of diverse lawyers within our leadership ranks. So when it became time to appointing people to leadership positions, it was very easy to do so that our subcommittee leadership and our task force is diverse. And I think that's critical if you're going to get, if you're going to represent essentially the people who are within your state and your bar. So then we went about trying to figure out, all right, what are the immediate needs? And we quickly developed 6 subcommittees. One I mentioned is the subcommittee I chair, which is the judicial and federal branch. As the crisis hits, your courts are going to shut down, and you need to be able to work with the chief judge and chief court administrators to make sure that you are providing access to justice, that the court system is adequately protected. But at the same time, you want to figure out ways to keep the courts open, keep the judges working, look at your technology to make sure that the judges have the ability to work remotely, issue orders so that if there are things that lawyers can do, it gets done. If they can represent clients, that's to everybody's benefit. Second subcommittee that we set up was one to work directly with the governor's office on executive orders. The third one is legal aid. Unfortunately, what we see in crises like these is that legal aid funding goes down because, at least in our state, a lot of the funding is based on court filings, and the court filings have been incredibly limited. So as legal aid funding goes down, the need goes up, and you're left with a big hot mess. So we have a legal aid subcommittee that is looking and focusing on that exclusively. We have a committee that is trying to have an outward face with the public. They're organizing food drives and trying to raise money for local food banks. We have a subcommittee that is focused on the legal profession, essentially providing a source of support and information for law firms, small, middle-sized, large, dealing with employment issues, management issues, how to run the firm when you're not in the office, things of that nature. We then developed quickly 3 other subcommittees, so now we have 8. One is to provide a resource to our lawyers, to legal aid, and others in need on financial issues. Trying to figure out, what are the best resources for insurance claims, for financial benefits, state and federal. We have a technology subcommittee that is working with lawyers who may not have devoted enough time as they should have to technology, and how to work remotely, how to hold hearings, depositions, using the various platforms. And we just appointed a subcommittee that is chaired by one of my law partners, a former appellate court judge, dealing with law students, and they're focusing on what's going to happen with the bar exam, how are we going to continue hiring people when law firms are in financial stress, what's going to happen with the graduating third years, are we be able to find them internships if their jobs get delayed. So, those are the types of things, the structure that we have in place. And as I listen to the task force, the overall task force calls every week and hear the committee report, it's incredible how much work is being done and how much good we're doing for the legal profession and the residents of the state of Connecticut.
Do you see these, the work of the task force ending on May 4th or May 6th, whenever this initial order comes to a lockdown order comes to an end? Do you see this going to go out for 3 months, 6 months, a year?
Well, our current orders end on May 20th. So
May 20th.
In theory, our lockdown, whatever we want to call it, ends if it doesn't get extended. As I've been studying this crisis, it's I think the best analogy is where we have a hammer and a dance. The hammer we're under now, and then you have the dance where you start going back to work and fits and starts, and it's you kind of take a step forward, take a step back, and you kind of move in between. So a lot of our subcommittees are going to continue to work. I think this is probably going to go out 3, 6, 9 months or a year or more, and I would even beyond this pandemic, I think that some of the things we're doing should become institutionalized. The technology piece of it. You and I have talked a lot about getting the legal profession to move ahead in technology. This may force some of those issues, and I think hopefully it will make lawyers more efficient, but also it will help with access to justice issues.
Yeah.
You
It's
know
been
what?
said a number of times that, in the last 30 days, we've moved the legal profession ahead 10 years. And
Right.
I hope that continues to progress. It's really a critical part of, I think, who we are as bar leaders to help move this along, provide better service and opportunity and greater access to all the people that need it, and help the lawyers learn how to do it.
And I think the public, the lawyers, and the legal community as a whole, which includes the judicial branch, have to realize at this point that technology can play a large role in bridging the access to justice gap that currently exists, and we're going to see more of that. And, as I said earlier, in times of need, funding is usually down, and more people are reaching out to the legal aid community for help. And technology is one way to try to solve that, because frankly, there just aren't enough lawyers and pro bono hours available to really help all the people who really need it.
So, Monte, there'll be bar leaders watching you today who will say, that's a great blueprint, or I'd like to drill down more on how they did that or where they are with this. How do people find out more about the task force that you're part of?
Yes, you can go to the task force webpage, which is at ctbar.org, and you can kind of follow the pages to get to our task force. It's pretty obvious. If people want to email me, that's fine. mfrank@pullcom.com, pullcom.com. I'd be happy to assist and point people in the right direction. And, I can't emphasize it enough. As good as the Connecticut Bar has been, and I'm really proud of the leadership role that Connecticut has played, and watching lawyers do incredible things on a daily basis to help the legal community and people. I wish we had had more time to prepare. For those in the middle part of the country, Chicago, Detroit aside, now's the time to really prepare, to start getting everything into place so that you're up and running, and way ahead of where we were when we started getting hit with COVID-19 cases in a big way.
Yeah, great advice. Well, Monte, thank you for taking time. Thank you for your leadership and work that you've done in Connecticut, and on behalf of all the members of the National Council of Bar Presidents, appreciate your work and your time today. Please be safe, and perhaps we can catch up again in a month or so and get an update on what's happening and how things are in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, and Patrick, I look forward to going to another concert with you and grabbing a beer at some point in the future.
I look forward to that as well. All right, Monte,
Yep.
take care. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
All right, bye-bye.